program is the active center. It's created by David Sappe.
Pronounced Seppi.
Pronounced Seppi.
All right, let's get right into it. Today we're tackling one of the most influential and, one of the most controversial ideas in all of modern history, Karl Marx's theory of class struggle.
So Marx kicks off his most famous work with this absolute bombshell of a statement. His whole point? Forget the kings, the queens, the epic battles you read about in history books. He's saying that underneath all of that, the real thing driving history forward has always been this constant conflict between social classes.
But what does that actually mean? And, why are these ideas still so incredibly divisive today? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack. We'll look at his theory, the solution he came up with, and the messy legacy it's left behind.
Okay, so to really get Marx, you have to start with his main idea. He argued that history doesn't really move forward because of brilliant new ideas or powerful leaders. Nope. For him, the real engine of change is this never-ending fight between different economic classes.
And it's really, really important to get what Marx meant by class. It's not what we might think of today. It's not about your family background, your identity, or even just how much cash you have in the bank. For Marx, it boiled down to one single question. What is your relationship to the means of production? Basically, do you own the stuff that makes wealth, the factories, the land, the tools, or do you have to sell your labor to the people who do?
So when Marx was looking at the industrial world of his time, he saw this big conflict basically coming down to two main groups. Think of them as two opposing teams in the big game of capitalism.
So on one side, you've got the bourgeoisie. These are the owners, right? The people who own the factories, the land, the machines, what Marx called the means of production. And on the other side, you have the proletariat. That's the working class. They don't own any of that stuff. The only thing they truly own is their ability to work, which they have to sell for a wage just to get by.
And this division, according to Marx, is anything but neutral. It creates this huge, fundamental power imbalance. The owners, the bourgeoisie, they can influence the government. They set the wages. They basically control the rules of the game because they own all the capital. The workers, meanwhile, often don't have much room to negotiate. They just need a job to survive.
So, okay, how does this system actually work on a day-to-day basis? Well, Marx said there's a specific engine at the heart of it all, a mechanism he called exploitation.
And he broke it down pretty simply. It goes like this. A factory owner, a member of the bourgeoisie, buys a worker's labor for a wage. Let's say it's $10 an hour. But in that hour, the worker produces, say, $30 worth of stuff. So where does that extra $20 go? Well, that's what Marx called surplus value. The worker doesn't see it, it's captured by the owner as profit. So for Marx, profit isn't just a reward for risk, it's the value taken from unpaid labor. And you can totally see the ghost of this argument today, right? In debates about living wages or how gig economy companies make their money.
This whole idea led him to a pretty radical conclusion about private property. He argued it's not some sacred, natural right. Instead, he saw it as the very mechanism that keeps this whole system going. It's the ultimate tool that allows the people who own property to maintain power over the people who don't.
So the big question is, if the system is so unfair, why don't the workers just revolt? Well, Marx had an answer for that too. He believed that the system has its own social sedatives, things that keep the working class from seeing their situation clearly. He famously called religion the opiate of the masses, but he also pointed to stuff like cheap entertainment and alcohol as distractions that just kind of numb people to the harsh realities of their lives.
Okay, so that's Marx's diagnosis of the problem. But he wasn't just about pointing fingers. He actually had a solution, a vision for a completely different kind of society, one that he believed would break this cycle of oppression for good.
And this was his vision for what he called communism. First, instead of private ownership, everything would be owned collectively. That means everyone has a stake in the work they do. Second, no more living off your wealth, everyone has to work and contribute. And third, and this is the big one, the entire goal of society would change. It wouldn't be about making profits anymore, it would be about meeting everyone's basic needs and ending poverty.
But, as soon as you hear that, a big objection pops up, right? Is this just a nice fairy tale? I mean, aren't people just greedy? Isn't competition just part of human nature?
Marx actually had a really interesting take on this. He'd say, no, greed isn't baked into our DNA. He argued it's a behavior that's rewarded by the system we live in. Capitalism, in his view, is a game where greed and competition help you win. So his bet was, if you change the rules of the game, if you build a system that rewards cooperation instead, you'll actually change human behavior itself.
So, that's the theory.
A powerful, radical idea. But what happened when people actually tried to build this new world? Well, this is where the story takes a really dark and complicated turn. In the 20th century, we saw several massive countries, like the Soviet Union, China, and others, try to build societies based on these Marxist ideas. But what happened in practice was, more often than not, a pretty terrifying departure from that original utopian vision. And the historical record is, well, it's pretty damning. Instead of creating more freedom, these states often crushed human rights, freedom of speech, religion, you name it. Their centrally planned economies frequently fell apart, leading to widespread poverty and even famine. And tragically, instead of getting rid of classes, a new ruling class, a powerful political elite, just took the place of the old one, leading to brutal dictatorships and the deaths of millions of people.
And all of this brings us to where we are today, trying to make sense of Marx's legacy. And it's a legacy that is just full of tension.
Here's a core conflict, the central puzzle of Karl Marx. On the one hand, he gave us this incredibly powerful critique of capitalism and inequality, a critique that for many people still feels sharp and relevant today. But on the other hand, almost every attempt to actually build his solution in the real world has resulted in authoritarianism, disaster, and immense human suffering. It's a tragic irony, really, considering what he was hoping to achieve.
And so we're left with these huge nagging questions. Was the problem in the theory itself, or was it just in the way people tried to put it into practice? And even if his solution was a catastrophic failure, does his diagnosis of the problems in our society still have something important to teach us? That, right there, is the enduring and deeply contested legacy of Karl Marx.